All right, well, we're definitely going to have some things to discuss here this morning. Uh, Obviously, I came out last night, and for some reason, not every single weekend that I do the must start and sit running backs video in particular. A lot of times, just because on Saturdays, I don't always have the time to do that in the afternoon. But yesterday, it felt particularly important. Obviously, we've got still a bunch of decisions to be made about guys like Kyle Monangai. I mean, Kyle Monangai is one of the biggest ones. I would say Travion Henderson has also been a big one this week as well. Um, I personally, still on that island with Brashard Smith. I prefer Brashard Smith today in that Kansas City matchup over Kareem Hunt, and I'm okay with being on the island because that's a feeling I'm pretty used to in my life. So, we'll answer a bunch of questions today. I did want to start out with the fact that Joe Flacco is indeed expected to play today. So that is definitely a good thing for all Bengals, not just Jamar Chase. It's good for Chase Brown. It's good for T. Higgins. It's good for everybody involved in Cincinnati because they can score a bunch of points today, and it can just be a fun game to watch just on the surface, I think, with Joe Flacco. So I do think that's really important, but we're going to get into a bunch of questions this morning, obviously. I will be honest, we had a pretty fun party last night. I dressed up as like a 70s like disco club owner and had plenty to drink, and the time change also screwed me up a little bit. So we're going to be slow a little bit to start, but we'll get into the swing of things here. So like the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support. Also, if you don't get your question answered in here today, go start a start sit poll. In fact, I would personally go do it now because it'll give you, a couple hours for people to answer and be able to better make your decision. So it's completely free to vote, completely free to start your own poll on FS Roundup. So I would go do that today. All right, let's get into it. Everything great? What's going on? Chaluto, what's going on? Everything great since I'm the only one in here? Not anymore. Chaluto, let's go indeed. Rolly 7979, what's going on? Hello, AJ Barner or Theo Johnson? Yeah, I think it's actually interesting. I was doing a team breakdown the other day. Somebody had A.J. Barner and Theo Johnson on the same team, along with Juwan Johnson. And I was telling that person, I don't like to keep two tight ends, much less three. Like, I don't think it's a really good idea unless you have, like, a really deep bench. I mean, for example, like, one of the dynasty leagues that I'm in personally, we have, 15 bench spots. So that makes more sense to keep a tight end or three tight ends than it does in a team where you have 7 or less bench spots. And so I think particularly because of the fact that those two guys aren't fantastic tight ends, it makes a little bit more sense to keep two. Now here's my problem with Theo Johnson ultimately is I think in this matchup today, he should in theory do pretty well for the Giants because they are kind of talent deprived, particularly at the pass catchers. But, this guy has not done very much outside of the 2-touchdown game that he ended up having for the Giants. What was that? I think that was Jackson Dart's first game against the Chargers. This guy is just not involved enough on a per-game basis down the field. And the one other touchdown he got was a freak play in Week 7 versus the Broncos. So I think of A.J. Barner as kind of just this one-off guy, one-hit wonder type of situation. Whereas with A.J. Barner, he's got target competition because of Elijah Moore. Elijah Arroyo over in Seattle definitely gives him target competition. But at the same time, A.J. Barner is actually being used down the field in pretty much every single game that the Seahawks have played. He's been used down the field. So, to me, this is a pretty easy A.J. Barner. I mean, I don't put it past Theo Johnson to have a better day because, he's the tight end one. But A.J. Barner just has more downfield targets, and he gets used in the red zone quite a bit. So, In tonight's game versus Washington, I have a feeling it could be a shootout tonight if Jaden Daniels actually plays well. So I'll go with A.J. Barner. Rachel Cruz, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Good to see you in here too. RB2, Jalen Warren, Monangai, or Henderson. Quarterback, Flacco, or Dak. Well, let's answer the quarterback question first. Flacco's obviously been a really good play for the past several weeks. And this matchup today, it's got like a 50-point over-under. So the way Vegas sees it is that it's going to be another shootout. I mean, let's just look at the last couple of games for Flacco. Week 8, he had 24.3 fantasy points. He had 26 fantasy points against the Steelers. And then he had 16.8 against the Packers. And I actually do think of the Bears as a pretty good defense, but I don't think they're good enough to stop Flacco. I think the one problem with Flacco, and I said this a couple times throughout the previous several days, is it feels like everything that the Bengals have is built. It is very built on a house of cards. Because Flacco, yes, he's going to play today, but it is his throwing shoulder. That is the problem. So every time he throws the ball, he's going to feel it. And then every time he gets hit, because if you don't think he'll get hit, that's just crazy because the Bengals offensive line can't hold him. Like, they can't do anything to stop anybody from hitting their quarterback. That's why Joe Burrow gets injured in the first place. So if you think that they're going to stop Flacco from getting hit today, like, that's a crazy thing to think about. So I do worry about Flacco. Like, even though he's going to play today, I do worry that he will go out at some point. And I don't want it to happen. I'm just a little worried. To me, as well, Dak's got a great matchup too. I mean, Dak is playing against the Cardinals defense. And I get it, they're coming off a bye week, but it is back in Dallas. And Dak does have like a lower floor, I would say. But in this week, it's actually the highest over-under of the week, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. So I would personally play Dak in this one. It feels a lot safer. The guy's not dealing with injuries, and I like his matchup a little bit better, actually. So I'd go with Dak. And then running back 2, Warren, Monangai, or Henderson. So yesterday I went through like I said, I did the running back start-sit video, which I usually don't always do. And I'm glad that I did it yesterday because I do think that it was a particularly important week to do that video. And to me, the way I look at Monangai, and I ended up not doing it. So on the running back start-sit video, I was discussing my dilemma personally of I have Kyle Monangai on the taxi squad in a dynasty league, and I was debating taking him off the taxi squad, and the guy I would have to drop in order to make that move is Jordan Mason. That's my weakest link on the bench. And so I opted to not do that because I didn't think it'd be worth it for the entirety of the season. You have to think of Dynasty a little different. Redraft, you could play Monangai and then just put him back on the bench or even on the waiver wire next week if Swift comes back and Swift takes the majority of the backfield again. So Monangai, to me, is in this excellent matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals today. Warren, I do think, is in decent position today because I do think the Steelers will put up points. It's a must-win game. They're at home, and it's a back-against-the-wall type of day. But I would personally much rather play Monangai against this weak Swiss cheese Cincy defense. And then Henderson, I am going to acknowledge, once again, Henderson is a true boom or bust play. He could absolutely come in and get like 25 points against the Falcons if they choose to use him as the lead back. I am not convinced of that whatsoever, though, because they haven't wanted to play him very much. So to me, Monangai, like, he's just been getting a more consistent role over the last several weeks. Monangai feels like the safest play between him and Henderson, and he also feels like he's got just as high of a ceiling almost, because the Bears' offensive line is great. They love to run the ball, and they kind of have to right now because Caleb hasn't been playing his best. So I would go Monangai personally. Monangai and Dak. Appreciate the super chat, Rachel. Again, always good to see you in here. Phenom TA, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Happy Sunday to you as well. Glad it's football day. I'm torn here, even though I feel like the right answer is Ferg. The poll is at 57%. Gad is at 57% Gad and 43% Ferg. But Ferg at Arizona. Yeah, I hadn't checked on the poll recently, but I did see the Gadsden versus Ferguson poll. I voted on it, and I voted for Jake Ferguson. Because here's my thing. I do believe, and I do think there's a lot of credence to the argument that you should ride the lightning with a certain player who's just going off right now. And I do agree with that. And especially considering Jake Ferguson is coming off a goose egg day. That's not a comfortable play whatsoever to put Ferguson back in your lineup. But there are a couple of things that play that are not going to be at play this week that were last week. So, number one is in this game against the Denver Broncos last week. Well, what's the one thing? Not the one thing. I mean, the Broncos are a great defense. But what's one of the best things that the Broncos do defensively? They get after your quarterback. They're leading the league in sacks by 10. 10 sacks. That's how good their defensive front is. They are getting after everyone's quarterback. So a lot of times in a lot of game scripts, that calls for a tight end to be used as a blocker more. That would indicate why Luke Schoonmaker, who is ordinarily a blocking tight end, got 3 targets and played 29 snaps in this game because he was used a lot in pass protection. Now, Ferguson was used in quite a bit of pass protection. This was an outlier game, though. If you look at every other week, and this is I'm someone who, the moment that CeeDee Lamb stepped back into the lineup, I thought Ferguson would become less important. But the week that CeeDee came back, he had 7 targets. That was because he didn't need to be used as a pass blocker. Well, the same is going to be the case this week for the Cardinals. He's not going to have to be used as a pass blocker nearly as much this week as he was last week. So I personally do think of Ferguson as the better play. Again, I'm not here to tell you that Gadsden is a bad play. I really do think he is a really good play this week. And I do think that there's a lot of credence, once again, to the argument that you should stay in the flames with some people. You should. But I personally, if this was my team, I would be playing Ferguson. I will not fault you if your gut is telling you to go ahead and play Gadsden, but me personally, I'll go ahead and play Ferguson. Appreciate the super chat. Dizzy B, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Thoughts on Christian Watson rest of season? Yeah, I think that Christian Watson's I think it probably matters more from a football perspective. And I want to explain that further because I do think that we can play Christian Watson as a flex option. But I think it matters more for Jordan Love's fantasy output than it does for Watson's. And the reason why is because last week it's hard to take anything else away other than the fact that the Steelers defense sucks, right? That defense is just atrocious. But, think about a couple things, right? The thing with the Steelers defense, yes, it is bad. But the Packers are dealing with tons of injuries at the wide receiver position in particular. I mean, Jaden Reed's been out, obviously, for a while. Dontavian Wicks has missed time. So they've been having to use Dobbs as this, de facto wide receiver 1. And he's not a bad player, but they didn't really have a field stretcher because Matthew Golden really wasn't doing that for them. So Watson has basically unlocked the deep ball for Jordan Love, and Jordan Love can sling it. I mean, and that's what Love, his fantasy value has been missing, is that deep threat. And so he comes back, and Love immediately unlocks the deep ball, throws for 360 yards. I've got news for people. I've been a big Jordan Love guy for a couple years now. I liked him when I first saw him back in 2023. And he completely turned his season around mid-season, and he became a top 5 quarterback in fantasy in 2023. I've been on him since then. And so it's part of it is like a belief from me that I think that Jordan Love is a really good quarterback, regardless of defense that he plays against. So to me personally, I think Watson probably unlocks Jordan Love's fantasy upside more than it's a great play on a weekly basis for Watson. Now, I do also think this. If you like every single week, and obviously we're at the point of the season where injuries pile up, bye weeks pile up, there's players underperforming. You know, guys like Jamison Williams, people felt like he was going to be a solid wide receiver too for their team. Well, he's turned out to be the exact opposite. He is the Rashid Shaheed type of player where you have to basically hit on a big play in order to get upside from this guy. So he falls into that category on a weekly basis of like minimal to inconsistent target share for Christian Watson, but can always hit the big play. So I personally do think that Watson is not like a wide receiver too, and someone you could like consistently put in your matchup. But like if you have a bye week, if you have an injury, I'm pretty comfortable putting Watson in as a really high upside flex option or wide receiver 2 option or wide receiver 3 option, depending on how deep the league is. So just kind of depends on game script, depends on matchup, depends on what your depth is. But I do think like he's a rosterable piece moving forward for sure. Appreciate the super chat. Flitsworth, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Yo, who should I start? St. Brown or Rashee Rice? I mean, you can't. It's hard for me to like say to sit one because obviously they're fantastic options. You're probably in like a shallower league, is my guess, because I see that you say you have JSN and Jamar Chase. Like that's pretty crazy. So you obviously have a stacked room. You said it's an 8-man league, so I guess it makes sense. Obviously you can't sit one of those two guys. So it really does come down to Amon-Ra versus Rashee Rice. So here's my thing. I think that in today's matchup, the Kansas City Buffalo game, that should be like a high flying matchup, right? Like I don't think that. I said this earlier in the rankings this week. I think what it's going to come down to in that game is that Kansas City probably makes Buffalo punt 1 or 2 more times than Buffalo makes Kansas City punt. I think Kansas City will probably have its way offensively with Buffalo's defense, and obviously Rashee Rice is becoming like I don't even want to say the central piece to the offense. I think it's even deeper than that. I really do think that they can move the ball without him, but Rashee Rice, you can't just take a game off without the guy and feel good about their offense like you do with him. Now, on the other hand, Amon-Ra St. Brown is the type of guy that, he's great. And I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. I can't imagine sitting either of these guys, but I have to split hairs since we have to make a decision. Like, the thing with Detroit is they've got so much talent outside of him. And we've seen this before. You can take away Amon-Ra St. Brown and feed Jameson one day, or feed Sam Laporta, or just go ground attack with Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery. You see where I'm getting at? Is like there's tons of options for Detroit to continue to move the ball. And it's a matchup where I don't think Minnesota is going to be able to hang in there. So, I have a feeling it's probably going to be a better day on the ground than it is for the pass. Now, I think, obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown can always go off, but I think if I had to make the choice, I would personally go with Rashee Rice because game script is going to enable plenty of upside all day for Rashee Rice versus Amon-Ra, who is in an offense that is overall tremendous, and they don't necessarily need him to have a big game in this one for them to crush the Vikings. If they were playing the Bills or they were playing the Chiefs and they had to go score a lot of points, I would probably lean Amon-Ra, but this is not a game script for that. Rashee is in that type of game script, so I personally would go with Rashee Rice over St. Brown, but again, we're splitting hairs against two great options. Appreciate the super chat. Jessica Lauren Good to see you in here. Appreciate the super chat. Morning to you as well. Starting Gibbs, Monangai, London, T, and Kittle. Who should I flex out of Hunt, Debo, and Ferguson? Okay, so you're starting Gibbs, Monangai, London, T, Higgins, and Kittle. Your flex options are Hunt, Debo, and Ferguson. Yeah, interesting call to play T over Debo. I actually don't blame you for doing that, though. I really don't think that Debo's healthy right now, and that's definitely a factor in all this. I think the one thing that keeps me on the wheel with Debo a little bit, number one, is because I loved him in the pre-draft process. Like, I was big on Debo Samuel. He was one of my top 3 or top 5 most drafted players this year on both underdog, best ball drafts, and in redraft leagues. I drafted Debo everywhere. Like, everywhere I drafted a ton of Debo. So I love Debo. Like, I think that he has proved me right for a lot of the season, but there's no question, like, I've had issues with him slowing down. And I think my ultimate problem with Debo is that he looks unhealthy to me. But what's keeping me on the wheel with him right now is that the games that we've seen him lately have been kind of without Jaden Daniels. Like, last week they played the Chiefs with Marcus Mariota. Well, obviously, like, he's probably not going to hit a ceiling game with Marcus Mariota at quarterback because he's not getting down the field targets. Now, then he missed week 7, obviously. In week 6, this was the game that he played with Jaden Daniels. If I'm remembering the game correctly, Debo had an end, like, he was wide open in the end zone, and I think Jaden just missed the throw, and he threw an interception. So my point in saying that is that I think Debo with Jaden has a lot of upside. I think if Debo is 80% healthy, I think with Jaden tonight could be a 25-point game. I don't really see that with T. Higgins personally. I think like the max I could see with T is probably like 19 to 20 points, which is good. With Joe Flacco, I do think he has that upside. But I think for me, like, my philosophy is that I would rather play the player with a better upside, and I would personally go with Debo over T. Higgins personally. But I don't want to mess with your decision. Like, I do think that you clearly made this one on a hunch. So, like, stick with your decision. But that's kind of the explanation why Debo would personally be my flex play. And I would play him over Jake Ferguson, who, again, I do think has a solid day today. But when I'm thinking about Jake Ferguson versus a wide receiver, it's harder for me to put Jake Ferguson in over a lot of guys because you can't wipe away that goose egg that he just gave you, right? So it's harder for me to just wipe that away and say, yeah, we could play Jake Ferguson over a lot of wide receiver options or running back options for that matter. And when it comes to Kareem Hunt, this is a guy I've been saying for the majority of the week. I'm on an island and I'm well aware of this, and I'm very okay with doing it. I think Brashard Smith is the better play in Kansas City this week than Kareem Hunt is. I personally do. And maybe I'm wrong, but I'm going to stick with my intuition and my gut on that one. So I would definitely play Debo out of all the options there. And I will say this, if I persuaded you, like I said, I wasn't trying to change your decision, but like in the event I persuaded you to play Debo over T, I would personally play Debo, and then I would also play Ferguson over T. Higgins. That's what I would do personally. Appreciate the super chat. Tyler Sperry, good to see you in here. Appreciate the super chat. Thoughts on Nico Collins probably versus Moss coming off a concussion? I think he will struggle in his first game back. I actually agree with you. I don't particularly love to play Nico this week. It's already against a great defense. But, the funny thing is, I actually don't worry as much about the matchup with Moss as I do with the Denver defense and the pass rush getting after C.J. Stroud. If we've seen anything this year from Houston, it's against 95% of the teams they've played against, they can't protect C.J. Stroud. If you think they're going to protect him today, you're out of your mind. I mean, this offense with the offensive line that they have has been atrocious already. And then you factor in the best pass rush in football. it should, in theory, be a bad day for the offense. And one of the things that we've seen is that CJ, like, I've actually always kind of liked CJ Stroud more than consensus, because I think he's if you give him time, the guy's a really accurate passer. He throws a really nice ball. He can layer it over the defense. Like, I like CJ's arm talent. But there's no question, CJ is not comfortable throwing on the run. He's just not. And so the problem is, like, in those types of situations against Denver, with the pass rush in your face, like, there's going to be a lot of, like, check downs. And there's going to be a lot of, like, get the ball out of my hands. I need to throw this quick. Nico has benefited over the years because when he can go over the middle, he can do these long developing routes, right? Like, he goes 15 yards up the field, does a crosser, cuts into the middle, or just goes deep. And CJ has time to let the play develop a little bit and let Nico get a step or two on the corner. My point is this. I actually don't worry as much about the matchup with Riley Moss. I still believe in Nico as a player. Like, I don't think it's him that's the problem. I think it's the offensive line that's the problem today for Nico. That's my issue with Nico today, is that this offensive line won't be able to hold up against Denver's pass rush. That's a brutal matchup, man. Houston's probably a bottom, if not the worst, bottom 3 offensive line in the league, and they're going up against the best pass rush. That is just bad matchup. That's why I would personally, I would pick the Broncos if I was a betting man. And I'm not betting as much on games these days because I haven't done very well. But if I was, I would take the Broncos to win this week on underdog. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think he's going to struggle today. But it's less about the matchup versus Riley Moss and more about the pass rush that Denver has. It's just going to be a hard day for him to be able to get open and to be seen by CJ before CJ is getting clobbered in the backfield. So, yeah, I mean, I think Nico, depending on what your situation is, like, I'm playing Nico in my Dynasty League where I have him at. And ironically, that Dynasty League is the only place I have Nico this year, besides some best ball teams, obviously. But, I mean, it depends on your lineup situation. But, yeah, Nico can be benched, I think. Appreciate the super chat. Steve H., what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Higgins, Debo, or Brashard Smith, full PPR. I'm glad that Brashard Smith is entering the conversation because, again, I'm on an island with Brashard Smith. Well aware, and I'm very comfortable with doing it. But the way I look at Brashard Smith this week is like, okay, we're talking about a guy who has been getting more work, and particularly in the passing game. Now, what's today's game going to look like in all likelihood? It's probably going to look like a shootout where Mahomes is going to go off. So we factor in already how bad Kansas City's running game has been all year. Well, Kareem Hunt, like, he's had every opportunity to think about it like this. If Kareem Hunt was the better running back than Pacheco, between the 20s, because that's where Pacheco has done most of his work, is between the 20s. If he was better, he would have been leading the backfield the whole time, and they would have been riding him a lot more than they would be riding Pacheco. But he's not. He's older player, and he has a nose for the end zone, and he's a good short yardage back. So that's how they use him, and they will use him like that. But Brashard Smith is so much more explosive, and he's a much better pass catcher at this point of his career. So that's what makes me believe that Brashard Smith has the better day. Now, of course, if Kareem Hunt rushes for 2 or 3 touchdowns, then it won't matter because, those touchdowns will give him 12 to 18 points regardless, right? So I understand where people are coming from with Kareem Hunt, but my point on Brashard Smith is, they're going to be using this guy all over the field today because they don't have Pacheco. So I think Brashard Smith is actually a really high upside play. No question that the floor is probably lower than it is with, Debo this week. I think Debo probably has an 8-point floor and a probably 25-point ceiling. But again, I mean, Debo, I don't think of it as a guy that's fully healthy. And then T, I love T, and I'm glad that his production has revived itself. But, I mean, look at last week. He had 2 targets compared to Jamar's 19. I mean, there's a clear favorite, obviously, for Joe Flacco, which is I'm just going to throw the ball to Jamar Chase in all situations. And the only game that T. Higgins was dominant in fantasy was against the Steelers' trash defense. So, yeah, I mean, I do worry about T for sure from an upside standpoint. I would personally play Debo over T. So it comes down to Debo versus Brashard Smith. And it probably shocks people that I would personally play Brashard over T. Higgins, but I would do it. And I would also personally play I would play Brashard Smith over Debo this week. I really would. Like, I'm not actually, let me backtrack. I probably wouldn't do this because I always want to be upfront about my decisions. And like, I have this decision in my own lineup, Debo versus Brashard Smith. And I have the opportunity to put Brashard Smith in my lineup, but I'm not doing it in my own league. So I can't tell you that I would. I'm personally playing Debo over Brashard Smith, but like that's how close it is. I mean, let's go to the comparison feature really quick. So the comparison feature on our site, this is for premium subscribers only. So if you want access to the premium, you want access to premium tools like the comparison feature, get the premium subscription here for $6 a month and get league-winning tools. Like this is just one of them. So you click on this view full comparison. It says the best option is Debo because I've got him like, what is that? 17 spots over Brashard Smith in my overall rankings this week. And it also would say that Debo, highest fantasy points per game, obviously, more efficient with touches and targets, highest usage volume, and he's higher in my rankings. So I'll stick with my comparison feature on this one. But they are relatively close. I mean, I really do think that they're both solid options this week. I think they're both upside options with relatively lower floors. So I'll go Debo this week. Appreciate the super chat. And then your second question was Taysom or Laporta. Yeah, Taysom has entered the chat for a lot of people. And I do also think that, you know, this has kind of been my point with my ranking of Olave and Shaheed this week. Like, I know Shaheed has been in the news lately for trade discussions. Like, he's a possible trade candidate at the deadline. But the whole point of me ranking those two close is this. I think with a new quarterback, it definitely shakes things up. And I think Taysom Hill, you know, the thing about Taysom is that he's always good for one big game. And he hasn't done it yet. So, like, he's due. Taysom is definitely due. Now, would I play him over, like, if you were asking me, like, Theo Johnson or Taysom Hill, I could honestly go with Taysom Hill. But, I mean, we're talking about Laporta. Like, Laporta, yes, he hasn't been great this year, but he's still too important to the offense on a better offense. And the floor is so much safer. Like, if you end up having a 0-point game from Taysom Hill, like, that's not going to be unexpected. But you're not going to blank with Sam Laporta. So, to me, like, it's not worth it to go with Taysom Hill over Sam Laporta. It doesn't make any sense to do that. So, yeah, I'd personally go ahead and play Laporta. Appreciate the super chat. Masab123. Appreciate the super chat. Good to see you in here. Half PPR, Slayton, Higgins, Jennings. Pats or Jags defense. Brr. So, T is becoming a popular question because I've said I don't love T. I'll personally go with T. Higgins over Slayton. And I actually like Slayton. You know, I actually do think that Slayton is a fine play. But I'll pull up the comparison feature again. They're not that closely ranked. Like, yes, T. Higgins did not make it inside my top 30 wide receivers this week, but he wasn't, like, he's never that far outside with Joe Flacco. But T. Higgins is, like, 23 spots ahead of Darius Slayton in my rankings this week because I just think of it as, like, T's just a better player, right? I mean, T. Higgins is the better player, and it's not like, you know, I love Dart. I think Dart has done really well, but, like, You know, neither one of their quarterbacks have bad matchups this week, and Joe Flacco's done perfectly fine. And he does provide T upside. So, like, I want to see it first with Slayton before I play him over guys like T. So I definitely play T. So it comes down to Jennings, which I'm not sure if you're talking about Jawan Jennings or Terrell Jennings, because Terrell Jennings is in play for me this week personally. I'm going to assume you're talking about Jawan Jennings. I think you would have specified if it was Terrell Jennings. So I'll go T over both of those guys. But yeah, Jawan Jennings to me, like, he has not done well this year. Like, no week has Jawan Jennings done well. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact he's injured. I mean, last week in a full PPR format, 8.5 fantasy points. Week 7, 7.1. Did he play in week 6? Yeah, he had 1.7 in week 6. Week 5, he did not play. Week 4, he had 4.4. Week 3, he did not play. Week 2, 19.9. Like, there's been one good game in here for Jawan Jennings, and that was before I think he was dealing with all his injuries. So, I'm not playing Jennings over T. Higgins. This is a pretty easy T. Higgins for me. And then Pats or Jags defense. I've said it. It's a little bit nerve-wracking to go with the Patriots defense this week to me, because the Falcons are the most hot and cold team. They could easily come out here and really challenge the Patriots today. I really do believe that. Because it's not only the fact that they have talent, and Penix and London are back this week, it's also because their coaching staff is absolutely on the hot seat. They're absolutely on the hot seat. So, I worry about the Patriots this week a little bit. I really do think that there's a world where they could get beat and they could give up, like, quite a few points. So, I'm not sold on the Patriots, but when it comes to the Jags, I'm not sold on them either. I mean, the Jaguars can lose against anybody. I really do believe that. Like, they're still the Jags. And they've been kind of proving it over the last several weeks. They got their teeth kicked in against the Rams, who are a much better team, obviously, than the Raiders. But, I mean, the Jags were kind of viewed as, like, they were kind of viewed as the overseas team for many years. I mean, they were the only team that was playing overseas. So, yeah, I mean, I think that personally, I distrust the Jags more than I distrust the Patriots. So I'll go with the Patriots defense, and I'll go with T. Higgins. Appreciate the super chat. Always good to see you in here, man. Justice Reborn, good to see you too. Appreciate the super chat. Parker Washington or Diami Brown? Who's the true talent? Well, that's an interesting question. Obviously, you're going to want to know who I'd go with in fantasy, and they're two different answers. So the way I'll answer this is like this. I think that Diami Brown is the better talent. Like, Diami Brown can do a lot more. He can do a lot more things. He can go deep a lot more than Parker Washington can, and I think he's just a better athlete than Parker Washington is. However, I'm going to go with Parker Washington pretty easily in fantasy this week. And I'll tell you why. Because Parker Washington, number one, he's been healthier than Diami Brown. Brown has been plagued with injuries this year, and that's kind of been the story of his career, is he's always dealt with, like, soft tissue injuries, because a lot of these types of guys, like, he's 6 feet tall and 195. A lot of these types of guys, like, when they're blazers like he is, well, they end up, like, coming up lame with hamstring injuries. That's, like, a deeper nugget. But my point in saying that is to basically get the point across that, Parker Washington has been even back to when he came out of Penn State, I remember liking the guy. And that was, I think, 2023 or 2022, one of the 2 years. He came out of Penn State, wasn't wildly productive in Penn State, but his route running was awesome. And that's why he can get 10 targets in a game. Because, like, he did it in week 7 against the Rams. Well, he's done it a couple other times this year. Like, he's actually had several big target games. Week 5, he had 3. Week 4, he had 2. Week 3, he had 10. Like, this guy can have big target games. 6 targets in week 2. Like, this guy has been pretty active for the Jags, and I think it's because he can run crisp routes, and obviously you take away Travis Hunter in the offense, and he should be more important. Like, he should probably be on the field 90 to 85% of the time today. So I like Parker Washington better than Dyami Brown. I'm not going to sit here and say that Dyami Brown is not the better upside play, but I think just from what we've seen from Dyami Brown, you can't really rely on the upside yet. I think Parker Washington gives you a better day in fantasy today. But yeah, I think that Brown is the better talent. But for fantasy, I'm going Parker Washington. Appreciate the super chat. Lycris, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Best flex between Kelsey, Worthy, and Jennings. So again, anytime, if you guys, moving forward in today's live stream, if you have a question about a Jennings, please specify, because I believe Terrell Jennings is in play. So particularly if you have Terrell Jennings, please let me know, because I'm going to assume that people, when they say Jennings, are talking about Jawan Jennings. So that's what I'll assume here, is that you're talking about Jawan Jennings. I'll play Worthy over Jennings easily, even though I think that Worthy is not healthy. I think Worthy is not healthy, and he's still the better play, because Jawan Jennings is not healthy either. And the matchup today, like, there's going to be tons of points. Now, I actually do believe there could be a lot of points in the San Francisco matchup as well, but I just don't think Jawan Jennings is the better player between him and Worthy. So if you both put them, like, they're both injured, so, like, give me the guy who's the better player, which to me is clearly Worthy. So I'll go Worthy pretty easily. And when it comes to Kelsey, Worthy or Kelsey is a legit question, because I've been underrating Kelsey for weeks now, and he's been proving me wrong. I mean, this is what Hall of Fame tight ends do, right? Like, I have just been off of Travis Kelsey from a fantasy perspective the last several years, and he's proven me right for the most part. And, like, when you watch the guy play, he's clearly not the same player, but he's just getting it done, and his connection with Mahomes is so good. Like, I think what the problem I've had is a lot this year, what we've seen from watching Kelsey in the Chiefs play is Kelsey has done a lot of production off of, like, one big play from a broken defense. And that feels like a fluke, right? It feels like it's fluky, but at the same time, it continues to happen over and over again. So I don't think you can classify it as a fluke. So Kelsey, I just think is, like, he's clearly healthier than Worthy is right now. And he's so important to this offense and Mahomes. So I think I got to go with Kelsey. Like, it's against my core belief, which is I think that Worthy is a better upside player, but Worthy has given us no upside games this year. I mean, you go through Worthy's game log, dude. 10.3 fantasy points in week 8 for Worthy. 7.8 in week 7. Week 6, he had 10.6. Week 5, he had 11.1. 17.1 versus the Ravens in week 4. That was good. Week 3, week 2, he did not play. Like, it's just been mostly garbage what we've gotten from him. So I'll personally go ahead and play Kelsey as your flex in this PPR league. Appreciate the super chat. NWM 712. Appreciate the super chat. Kareem Hunt or Chase Brown for the flex, full PPR. Yeah, I think this is a pretty clear Chase Brown for me. If you would have asked me, I think this is kind of the mix-up with a lot of people, is that if you go around the fantasy community, again, like I've said, I'm on an island with thinking Brashard Smith is the better play than, like, I think most people think that Kareem is a better play than Brashard Smith. I think Brashard is the better play. So if you're asking me Brashard Smith or Chase Brown, I would go with Brashard Smith, but actually it's close. But you're asking me Kareem Hunt, who I think is just a limited player, and Chase Brown has Joe Flacco today. Chase Brown has revived his fantasy upside for a couple straight weeks now with Joe Flacco in the lineup. So I think, if he was playing, if the Bengals were playing the Packers or if they were playing the Broncos, I would feel less comfortable going with Chase Brown because I think their team's upside as a whole probably not high in that type of game. But against the Bears today, I think it could be a high-scoring matchup. So I'll go with Chase Brown over Kareem Hunt, who I think has no fantasy upside unless he gets in the end zone. Appreciate the super chat. Celeris, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Goff or Caleb and Jacoby or Kamara have PPR. So let's answer the quarterback question first. Goff or Caleb. I think they're both solid options today. The reason I'll go with Caleb is because of matchup. And it's not that I don't think Goff can't do well against the Vikings defense. I do. I do think he could have a big day today. But I think that the thing I'm thinking about with the Vikings is, listen, divisional games can get weird. And this is something I always say on this channel, year in and year out, is that when it comes to division games, you may think, how many people thought that the Bengals would be beating the Steelers a couple of Thursday nights ago? Me, I thought that. I actually put money on the Bengals that night, and I came out pretty big winner. I mean, I didn't put that much money on them, so I only made a couple $100. But, I mean, point being is that I saw that coming. Most people probably didn't, though. Well, that's because divisional games get weird, So, a lot of times, and again, who thought the Patriots were going to beat the Bills a couple weeks ago? Probably nobody. So, I think that the Lions should win today. But this defense is aggressive. I mean, Brian Flores is an aggressive play caller. He's going to run, he's going to get after Goff because he knows that's Goff's weakness. So I think there's a world where Goff could have a pretty bummer day. Caleb, I struggled to see that. I get it. Caleb has been bad over the last several weeks in particular. But this is kind of like the remedy matchup. I mean, if there was any remedy matchup in the league, it's definitely against the Bengals. That defense, you could do anything against them. You want to throw against them, you could throw against them. You want to run the ball against them, you can run the ball against them. You could just do anything you want to. So, I think you got to go with Caleb. I think his upside is just higher. And then Jacoby or Kamara, they're both underperforming, so it's really tough. I mean, I don't want to go with either guy, to be honest. Let's look up Kamara. I'm assuming since you're asking, he's been ruled active, but I do know he was, dealing with an injury. So, yeah, he's going to play today, which is fine. I mean, because it's just not been good. I mean, the one thing I do wonder is, Tyler Shug being the quarterback today, is there a chance that Kamara can get 10 targets in this game? Is it possible? I think it is because, this guy, Spencer Rattler was bad, but it's possible it gets worse. I say the same thing in Minnesota. Carson Wentz was bad, but it's very possible that it gets worse. 100% possible. So I don't feel like Kamara is out of the realm of possibility to get 10 targets when his quarterback is Tyler Shug, 26-year-old rookie who couldn't even win the job over Rattler. It's bad, man. He's not good. I remember watching Tyler Shug. He played for Texas Tech, where I graduated for, I think, one season, if I'm remembering correctly. I think he played for us the year that I left Tech. So I watched him, and I was like, this guy looked okay, but he bounced around, and I was like, he's just not that good, is he? So, yeah, I personally think that Kamara is probably the better option. The thing with Jacoby Myers is this guy clearly just doesn't want to be there. And I think that if you take one thing that I said over the week this week that really caught my eye is that Pete Carroll came out of the bye week and he said, we're going to really embrace a youth movement on this team. And that to me would kind of indicate hey, you don't want to be here? Like, we're not going to make you play as our wide receiver one. Like, we'll get Jack Betch involved. We'll target Trey Tucker. We've got Brock Bowers coming back. Like, I really do think that Jacoby Myers could find himself pretty irrelevant in this offense. At least Kamara is still relevant. So I'll go with Kamara and a half PPR over Jacoby Myers. Appreciate the super chat. Delonte, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Full PPR, sit 1. Hunt, Travion, T-Mac, Sutton. I think that the guy that I would personally sit is going to be Hunt. Again, it's just a belief thing for me. Like, I think that Kareem Hunt, I want to just kind of prove this to people really quick. Like, first of all, let's look at Kareem Hunt's efficiency. 4 yards a carry, not bad at all, right? But what really is getting him, I mean, he's got 245 yards through 8 weeks. So my point in showing this is like, everybody has seen it. I think everybody just kind of automatically assumes for some reason that Hunt is going to get like 15 carries in this game. I mean, I just don't believe that's going to be the case. I think that if anything on the high end, he could maybe get like 10. But he's going to continue to be a short yardage back for this team. That's just what he is at this point of his career. So yeah, he's had 5 touchdowns, including through the air. He's just not the same player that he used to be. You look back to like all of his game logs, and I mean, again, like he's done fine, but from a fantasy perspective this year, it just hasn't been like, if he doesn't get in the end zone, it's just not going to be that good of a day for him. So last week he gets in the end zone twice. So he gets 17 points. Keep that in mind. 17 points for 2 touchdowns. That's actually not that great for a 2-touchdown game. 1.8 points. Doesn't get in the red zone against the Raiders, where they scored 31 points. That's how low his floor is. I think those 2 weeks display it all, which is obviously Pacheco was there for both those games, but still, I think people that are automatically assuming that Kareem Hunt's going to lead the backfield are not paying attention to Brashard Smith's usage and probably not paying attention to Kareem Hunt's usage. I mean, Kareem Hunt has been a short yardage back for this team the whole year. So to me, like, Travion is a high upside play. I'd play him over Kareem Hunt. T-Mac is a solid play. And Sutton, I think, I get it. Like, I don't love Sutton's matchups at all. But, like, there is a line where I'm not going to sit Sutton for Kareem Hunt, personally. Like, that is a line that I just won't cross. I'll go with Sutton. And the guy I would sit is Kareem Hunt. Appreciate the super chat. Miggs, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Question is in the chat. Much love, great vids. Well, I appreciate that. Thanks for being in here. Start tight end. Loveland, Hawkinson, Fant, J. Smith. Jonnu Smith, I'm assuming. Start Woody or Kamara, Cardi, Prater, or Santos. Also, Seattle defense with Daniels playing, or San Fran, Indy, or the Giants. So the tight end selection here is Cole Kmet playing? I feel like he is. I haven't seen much on this one. Yeah, Cole Kmet's playing. So I don't personally love Colston Loveland. I mean, I'll be honest, like, I was not the biggest fan of Loveland out of the draft. I thought that he was kind of just like a little overrated, and I think the Bears overdrafted him personally. Even last week, right? Like 5 targets, 3 catches, 38 yards. That was without Cole Kmet. Like, he's not the greatest upside play. And I get it. It is the Bengals. Like, I can see this one working out. I'd probably still take the shot on Hawkinson. It's kind of weird. I'm at a place right now where, like, a lot of people have been, like, figuring out what I knew all offseason about Hawkinson, which is that Hawkinson was not going to be a good pick in fantasy football. A lot of people were a little slow to this party, though. Like I was saying that Hawkinson was going to be a bad pick from the very start of the offseason when I saw his price. And it hasn't worked, obviously. But the one thing I will say is, like, I find myself a lot of times I have to start defending these guys because I will say with TJ Hawkinson, he has been involved. Like, he has been involved in this offense. And, you know, week 8, obviously not the greatest measure for that. But week 7, like, he had a touchdown taken away from him. That would have been a big day for TJ Hawkinson. A lot of people would have been pretty happy with that. Now, with J.J. McCarthy back, I don't love it, but I'd still probably play him over Loveland, Fant, or Jonnu Smith. Fant is not a bad play today either. He's just Fant's not a bad play. He's been relatively involved. 3 targets in week 8. 4 targets against the Steelers in week 7, 4 targets against the Packers in week 6. And I think that was the first, the week 6 game was, I think, the first game with Jamar. Or I'm sorry, the first game with Flacco. So, like, Fant has been relatively consistently involved. I'd probably play Fant over Hawkinson. So it comes down to Fant versus Jonnu. I think that Jonnu is he hasn't been very good. I saw the Muth was dealing with, and he was dealing with injury. He came off the injury report. So, okay. So, yeah, the Muth is going to play today. I don't love playing Jonnu. I think I'll go with Fant. They're all relatively, like, weak options. Like, I'm not personally the biggest fan of any. I think the one people will probably want to go with Loveland. I wouldn't mind going with Loveland. Like, they're not that far apart, Loveland and Fant. If you want to go with Loveland, like, have at it. To me, personally, I'll go with Fant. Cardi, Prater, or Santos. I will personally go ahead and play Prater. I think Prater is going to be a good play this week. Like I said, I think, you know, you clearly look at the matchup against Kansas City. They're going to score. Like, this is just one of those games. Josh Allen will make sure that this team is ready to play Kansas City. I mean, they're going to be a factor in this game all day. And I've said it throughout the week. I think the one thing that makes the difference here in this matchup versus Kansas City is Kansas City's defense is better than Buffalo's, right? So I think that Kansas City's defense probably makes Buffalo either punt more or kick more field goals than Buffalo's defense does to Kansas City's offense. So I think for that reason, Prater is the better play. And then Seattle's defense with Jaden playing or San Fran, Indy, or the Giants. So I'm not going to play San Francisco. Out of these options, I just don't trust that defense when you're throwing guys like you and me out there. I was proven really wrong last week. I thought they'd be a solid play last week. They did not turn out to be that at all. It was bad. So I'm not going to do that again. They've reached the line of diminishing returns. Like, it's just not, it doesn't work well when you're throwing guys like you and me out there. I think the Giants are a fine option too. Like, the Giants are in my top 12. They did not move. They're not my favorite out of these though. Like, to me, it comes down to Seattle versus Indy. And listen, I actually understand people's perspective on playing Indianapolis over the Seahawks, but here's my thing with the Seahawks defense. So they're in the category of Denver. Really, it's them and the Broncos. The Broncos and the Seahawks. Those are the two defenses that I feel like can be played against 95 to like 97% of the league. Like, if you're playing the Bills or the Chiefs or the Ravens with Lamar, like, That's tough. Like that I'll probably try to find a different option, but like even against like good offenses, like New England, for example. New England's offense has been awesome. I still feel okay with riding with the Seahawks defense. Like I always say, don't feel married to a defense, but the Seahawks and the Broncos are two defenses that I'm like, I'll ride with them through the rougher matchups just so I can make sure I can hold on to them for the good ones. Seahawks defense is great, bottom line. And I think that the other problem that I have with Washington, and I've said this a couple times this week, is that Jaden Daniels has been in and out of the lineup all year. It's kind of been a lost year for Jaden. And I love Jaden. Like, I am a big Jaden Daniels fan. I liked him. I mean, my sister went to LSU, so, like, I've always kind of liked LSU players. That's why I was big on Kayshon Boutte in New England, because he was an LSU stud when he was there. But the thing with Jaden, man, is that if you look at him in his season, like, he's obviously a good fantasy player because he can run, but Jaden's completing 61% of his passes. I mean, it's just not been that great of a year for Jaden. It just hasn't been. So I do think Jaden could have a day where he just doesn't, like, it's just not working this year. So I'm just not as afraid of Jaden and playing a defense against him as I would have been last year. I think for second-year quarterbacks, man, if you're in and out of the lineup, it's not great. So I'll personally play the Seahawks defense, because the one thing with Indy, too, they've obviously done great defensively, but I do think that in Pittsburgh this week, they're going to be fired up. I do think that it's a must-win game for the Steelers. I think they're going to put up a lot of points. Like, I do think that Rodgers, and by the way, Rodgers has played good football this year. He has. So I'll personally go with the Seahawks. Appreciate the super chat. Bullwinkle 5612. Appreciate the super chat. Play 3, 2 wide receivers and a flex. Dobbs, Pittman, Nico, Kelsey, and Kareem Hunt. The 2 wide receivers easily. Pittman is easy. And again, Nico, I get it. I get the hesitancy with people on Nico, but when it comes to Dobbs, that line is too deep for me to sit Nico. If you were asking me Nico versus Devontae Adams or Nico versus maybe even Deebo Samuel, I'd consider it, but we're talking about Romeo Dobbs, a player that, with the return of Watson, I think is affected. So I'll go Nico and Michael Pittman as my wide receivers. And then the flex, that's a real question. I'd go with Kelsey over Kareem Hunt. And Kelsey versus Dobbs, it's relatively close, but I'm going to go with Kelsey again because I want in on the matchup. Kansas City versus Buffalo, and I think that his upside I've understated for weeks. And I'm not going to do that anymore. I think that he has a lot of upside. So I'll personally go with Kelsey as the flex. And then Pittman and Nico as the wide receivers. Appreciate the super chat. Alias, what's going on, man? Good to see you in here. Appreciate the super chat. Golden or Trey Tucker? I'm going Trey Tucker pretty easily. I think that Matthew Golden can... I would bench him in most situations. Like, most situations, probably 80 to 85%, I would sit Matthew Golden, if not more. I mean, Golden has already... It just hasn't worked. Like, it has not worked. And honestly, I feel kind of vindicated a little bit because I always viewed Golden as an overrated prospect. And I remember getting so much heat for this. During the offseason, you guys don't... A lot of you probably don't know this. I have a Dynasty channel. You can actually find the link in my, like, if you go to my channel, you can find the link there. It's Dynasty Fanalysts. Haven't rebranded that yet. I will. But, like, I covered prospects coming out of college in the Dynasty channel, and I did a whole video by itself covering Matthew Golden, and I was just kind of highlighting after his 40 time. I was like, dude, I think a lot of people are going to overdraft this guy now, and I don't think it's worth it. Like, and a lot of people were like, dude, you're crazy. Like, this is an insanely stupid take. I feel kind of vindicated. Like, it's not that I wanted to see him do bad, but I just don't feel like he's that good of a player. And the fact that he couldn't take advantage of the opportunity that was there with Watson out, Jaden Reed out, Dontavian Wicks out, like, it just kind of shows me that he's just not ready. And I don't know if he ever will be to be a legitimate difference maker. Panthers matchup is good, but Trey Tucker at the very least has been involved weekly. You know, like he's been involved weekly and he's actually hit big plays. Like Golden has not really done that. So I'll go with Trey Tucker. Appreciate the super chat. Logan Rulin, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. I have Flacco, Dart, Jaden Daniels at a loss on who to start, especially because I have the Seahawks defense on my roster. That makes sense. I understand what you're saying there. I see Junk Buster commented down below, you don't draft JD5 and not start him. I have to agree with that. Like, I get it. The Seahawks defense, I like playing them. I mean, there's a world where you can have two good performances, right? Like, you could have like a 10-point game from the Seahawks defense and have Jaden have a 20-point game, right? Now, I will say, like, the guy who's closest is easily Dart. Like, Flacco, fine play, but I think that there's the problem with Flacco is, again, like the throwing shoulder thing, it makes me nervous. And with Dart, I think that the problem is that he's just weapon deprived. So if I have to choose one, I'd go Jaden Daniels. I get it. Like, I understand the hesitancy of playing Jaden Daniels, especially since, like, he's been good, but he hasn't been, like, outstanding this year like he was last year. So I understand the hesitancy, but I will personally go ahead and play Jaden Daniels. Appreciate the super chat. By the way, all these numbers we're going through, guys, completely free on FS Roundup. Again, it's a good time to start a poll, a start-sit poll on fsroundup.com. It's completely free to start the poll and completely free to vote. So you'll get live feedback and results from the community on who they would play to help you make your decision. And if you want access to my top 250 rankings on a weekly basis, just go sign up for the premium subscription on FS Roundup and get that along with the waiver tool and a lot of other league-winning features for $6 a month. League-winning features for $6 a month, guys. Migs, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. What about Brashard Smith over Woody and Kamara? I would do it, personally. Yeah, I would easily over Kamara. Kamara is an easy one to sit. I would play Woody over Kamara for sure. Like, I think of Kamara as a low-end play right now. I do, because he's proven me right the entire way. And again, Brashard Smith, I'm just bigger on him. Now, I think the thing with Woody Marks, I've said it a couple times in the live stream. The problem I have with the Texans this week and CJ Stroud is that I think he'll be under duress the entire game, and so I think it really opens up the opportunity for checkdowns today. And Woody Marks, in theory, should be getting a lot of checkdowns. But still, the upside of the matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Bills, I get it. You kind of have to have some steel balls to play Brashard Smith, and I'm not even saying that I do, because like I'm still playing Debo in my league over Brashard Smith, but I think Brashard Smith is a really good play. So if it was me personally, I'd play Brashard Smith over Woody and Kamara. Appreciate the super chat. Esteban Simon, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Start one. Theo Johnson, AJ Barner, or Hunter Henry. To me, it's a pretty easy Hunter Henry. In one way, Hunter Henry and AJ Barner are very similar plays because, the irony with Henry is that a lot of us think of him as like the sole tight end in New England. It's actually not the case. Like, Austin Hooper has been plenty involved this year on a low-key scale. I mean, Henry has had games where he's had last week he got one target. He just got in the end zone with it. But, I mean, Hooper had two. In week 7, Hooper had 2, and he got in the end zone. Like, they use Austin Hooper plenty. So, there is kind of that, like, Elijah Arroyo effect with Seattle for Hunter Henry in New England. I think of Henry as probably just a more consistent red zone threat than AJ Barner is. I mean, AJ Barner started out the season as a more consistent red zone guy, but getting into week 6, like he used down the field but not in the red zone. Week 7 not used very much at all. So I do worry, like, if we come out of the bye week and we start to see a little bit more of Elijah Arroyo, I think it's possible. I mean, they drafted the guy in the 2nd round, and they clearly like him. Like, they're getting him involved. So I would personally go with Hunter Henry, and I would go with A.J. Barner over Theo Johnson. He's not that close to Hunter Henry. So Henry it is for me. Appreciate the super chat. Mr. Trey Cinco, appreciate the super chat. Half PPR pick 2. Myers, Coleman, Kamara, and Pierce. Alec Pierce, I'm assuming, is what you're asking. I actually, it's funny. Like, if you look at my rankings on FS Roundup, you would see that, like, Kamara, and if you played based off my rankings, which I oftentimes do, like the majority of the time I'm going to play guys based on my rankings, but this does feel like one of those times where, like, I want to sit Kamara and Myers in a lot of situations. Like, those are two guys that I just don't have much confidence in right now to have upside games. Like, yeah, with Kamara, we may get like a 6 or 7 point game, but like, whoopty freaking do. I mean, are we going to get a 19 or 25 point game from him? I don't feel like that's really in the cards. Like, it just feels so bad right now. And they're playing the Rams today, who have a really strong front 7. Like, that's just not a good matchup. So I think of Kamara as a guy who, again, you could go to him, and if I line him up with any of these guys in the comparison feature, you would see that Kamara would be the number 1 choice. I'm not going to do that, though. I will go against my rankings here. I'll play Alec Pierce and Keon Coleman over both Myers and Kamara. Because, again, at least with Coleman and Alec Pierce, I actually feel like we can get upside. With Myers and Kamara, their rankings are purely based off of like a floor that I think they have. But the problem is they're not going to hit a ceiling. So for me, I'll go against my rankings. Coleman is ahead of Myers, but Pierce is not. I'll play Pierce over Myers, and I'll play Pierce over Kamara. And just to highlight like how much I'm going against my rankings right now, let's just line up Kamara and Pierce alone. Let's line these two guys up. You're going to see how against I'm going my own rankings that I made. Like, my own rankings. Kamara is like 30 spots higher than Pierce. I'll go with Pierce. I think Pierce is the better play this week. Against the Pittsburgh Steelers, soft defense, I'll take the matchup. And Keon in the matchup versus Kansas City. Feels like one of those games he could have a good one. I'll go with Coleman and Pierce. Appreciate the super chat. Kobe, should I play Kenneth Walker, Aaron Jones, or Jordan Mason? It's tough, obviously, right? I mean, they all have split backfields. Jordan Mason, it feels like a really bad play this week. I'm sitting Jordan Mason everywhere I have him, and I've got him in a lot of places. I drafted him in a lot of redraft leagues. I've got him in a dynasty league. I've got him in a bunch of best ball teams, so obviously I can't bench him over there. But, I think Mason's a bad play this week. I really do. I think of Mason as a matchup-based play. And I've been discussing it a lot over the last, 2 weeks or so. Particularly after the disaster that was on Thursday night against the Chargers. I think a lot of people want to drop Mason. I wouldn't. But I'm not playing him this week. I'd play Aaron Jones over Mason this week for sure. Because I just don't think they're going to be able to keep up. And they're going to have to go in a game script that'll favor Aaron Jones. So I'll play Aaron Jones over Mason. I'll rule him out. Kenneth Walker versus Aaron Jones, relatively close. I'll go with Kenneth Walker, though, because the thing that I'm clinging to with Kenneth Walker is that I think of Kenneth Walker as a really good player that is kind of getting screwed a little bit because they're clearly wanting to split the workload, probably to keep the guy healthy, which I can't blame them for doing that. I mean, Kenneth Walker has been injured a lot this year, so I don't blame them for doing that. But he's just a clearly better player than Charbonnet. So it's frustrating in that sense, but the one thing I'm clinging to is that he's the better player in a good offense. He's just more efficient on his work, and I think of him as a guy who still can go for a big gain. And against Washington's defense, it feels more likely, and they're just a better offense. So I'll go Kenneth Walker. Very close. I would say it's more of a gut call, but I'll personally play Walker over Jones. That's what my gut's telling me. Appreciate the super chat. And good to see you in here, Kobe. Mr. G5480. Appreciate the super chat. Start 2 out of Rico, Tracy, and Hendo, also for quarterback, Dart or Daniels. Very popular question, man. We'll go with the quarterback first. Again, I'm going to stick with Jaden Daniels. They're very close. I'll line them up in the comparison feature just so you can kind of see how I've got them ranked. I mean, they're very, very close. So, Jaden Daniels and Jackson Dart. Jaden Daniels is 2 spots ranked over Dart. That's how close they are. I mean, I really like both of them. I think that it's actually like, it's not even that I like both of them. I think they're both solid plays. Jaden is not one of my most highest ranked quarterbacks this week. But I kind of am with one of the other comments on the live stream said, like, if you drafted Jaden, you're going to play him. I would get behind that statement. So for me, it's Jaden. And then start 2 out of Rico, Tracy, and Hendo. So close, man. That's a really tough one. They're all very, very closely ranked. Let's line them all up in the comparison feature. Rico Dowdle, Tyrone Tracy, and Travion Henderson. They're all so close. It's so crazy. Rico's the best option. He's 36th ranked. Tyrone Tracy's 42. Travion's 44. They're so freaking close. It's so crazy. I'll tell you, the reason, like, it's all about workload for me in this particular question. So, Rico is the guaranteed starter today. Guaranteed. Tyrone Tracy, in theory, is the starter, but I told people this yesterday. I'm worried about it because I think that based on his own play this year and based on the fact that I think if he doesn't play well, they can easily go with Singletary and he could catch fire. And it could go a little sideways for Tracy today. I think that's a factor. And Henderson hasn't been that good on a per-touch basis this year. Last week, I get it. Like, he looked good, but, I mean, they just haven't wanted to play him either. So, like, it does not – the workload is what it comes down to for me. Because all of these guys are so risky. Like, Rico, the matchup, if it was an easier matchup, Rico would be the easiest play. The easiest play out of the bunch. Because, again, we know he's been really good, number one. And number two, he's finally getting the start. So, like, it feels so obvious, but obviously the matchup just kills the momentum. So, I'll stick with it, though. I'm playing Rico out of these guys, for sure. And then it comes down to Tracy and Henderson, and they're close enough in my rankings to where I'll tell you this. Like, I think Henderson's upside is probably higher. I do think that. I think Henderson probably has like a 25-point ceiling today, whereas for Tracy, probably like 17 to 19 points. Solid, but I think the floor of Tracy is better. I would say Tracy's floor is probably around 7 points. And I think Henderson's is probably around 4 to 3. So go with your gut. My gut, and I'll stick with my ranking, I'll go Tracy over Henderson, but they're very, very close. So I'll go I'll go Tracy and Rico. Appreciate the super chat. Nathan, what's going on, man? Always good to see you in here. Appreciate the super chat. Play 3, Dobbs, Spears, Monty, and Marks. I like David Montgomery in this matchup. I really do. David Montgomery has already been he's been like a boomer bust play this year, ironically, because it's kind of not what he's been throughout his career. But unless he gets the big run, it hasn't been great. That said, this week against the Vikings, I think my thought this week against the Vikings that at some point the dam is going to break. And they're not going to be able to keep, the Vikings will hold them for a while, but I don't think their offense will keep up. And then their defensive dam is going to break, right? That's what I think happens today. So I think that Monty is one of the 3 for sure. He's also highest ranked. I would play Woody Marks over Romeo Dobbs because, again, I think a lot of checkdowns are going to come his way today, with the failing offensive line of the Texans against the best pass rush in the league. And then I think the last one, and I like Tajay. I do. I think he's the best player in that offense. I actually do believe that. I think Tajay Spears is the best player in the Tennessee offense, but it's still the Tennessee offense, man. I mean, it's so bad. It's so bad. I cannot tell anybody watching me that Tajay's a great play. He's a solid play. But Romeo Dobbs, to me, better ceiling and probably just as solid of a floor. I mean, you saw last week, man, Tajay, 17 points is good in a full PPR, but that's a super good ceiling game for him. I mean, he's just not getting I mean, they're going to get crushed by anybody, but especially today, they're going to get crushed. I'll go Romeo Dobbs, I'll go Monty, and I'll go Marks. Unfortunately, I'm just going to keep Spears on the bench. Good stash. I really do think that he has upside, and I think there's a possibility that he could take over the backfield, but it's not today. Appreciate the super chat. G Medina, good to see you in here, man. Appreciate the super chat. What's going on? Full PPR flex, Dowdle, Bam, Jennings, Franklin, or Marks. At quarterback, Jaden Daniels or Caleb. And half PPR, tight end, Ferguson or Gadsden. We'll answer the tight end question first. It's we've gotten the Gadsden versus Ferguson question a ton on FS Roundup in polls. And again, start sit poll. We're running out of time, guys, and I'm running out of time to answer questions. So I would start a sit poll on our site to get live results and feedback. That's free to vote, free to start a poll. But Ferguson and Gadsden, man, it's such a popular question, and my answer remains the same. And I don't even know if it's right, but I'm sticking with it. Jake Ferguson's my play. And the reason why is because I believe that this week people are surprised with how well he does. The reason he did bad, and I know people, if you go to other fantasy YouTubers, they're just not going to highlight this, man. Ferguson last week, his problem was that he was playing the best pass rush in football, and the Cowboys have actually done pretty well protecting Dak, but this just shows how good Denver's pass rush is, and a reason I think the Texans are going to suffer today, because Denver's pass rush is tremendous. And so what happens, Aaron Rodgers appears to injure his throwing hand today during warmups. Eesh, that's not good. That is not a good thing. Sorry, I just got that alert. I just saw that alert really quick. That could be a problem. But my point with Ferguson is that Ferguson got dropped back into so many pass blocking situations, man. So I think today's different. Gadsden will have a bad game. I do believe that. But I think that it comes down to a belief for me. I'd go Ferguson in this one personally. And then the flex, Dowdle, Bam, Jennings, Franklin, or Marks. I think I've got to go with Dowdle. I get it. Like, you've got plenty of options, and there's plenty of upside in these options. All of these guys, though, they have an uncertain workload. I mean, Jennings is an easy sit for me. If it's Juwan Jennings, it's an easy sit. But Bam Knight, I just don't think the upside is that great. So for me, I'll take the guy who's just a better player, Rico Dowdle. And Troy Franklin, bad matchup. And I still don't feel super certain about his workload on a week-to-week basis. I get it. Last week was great, but it was against the Cowboys. I mean, it's against the Texans today. So I'll go Dowdle over him, and I'll go Dowdle over Woody only because we know that Dowdle's lead back. And Houston, they keep wanting to mess around with Nick Chubb. They want Nick Chubb in the lineup. They do. So, like, you can't factor that out. So I'll go Dowdle at the flex. And then at quarterback, I'll go with Jaden and Caleb. They're very close. I'll tell you right now, Caleb is higher ranked. But there's no question that Caleb is definitely in position to give, like, he's got a much lower floor than Jaden. Jaden can run on a weekly basis, and Caleb can too. But the problem with it is that Jaden is the better player than Caleb, and I trust him more. So they're one spot difference ranked. I actually just updated this. Like, I originally thought I had I originally had Caleb over Jaden Daniels, so it's tough, but yeah, I think for me personally, it's got to be Jaden Daniels at the quarterback. So yeah, I think that's all of them. Yeah, appreciate the super chat. Hayden Herr, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. All right, I'm going to try to speed things up. We've got like 15 minutes, so I'm going to go a little faster. Start Monangai or Pickens full PPR? Very good question. That's a really interesting one. That's a super tough one. Pickens in the game versus Arizona. You know, I think the one thing that we haven't, and I haven't even really touched on this yet, the one thing that I do think is going to be a factor is that Pickens will, with CD back, I do think that you have to factor in that Pickens is going to have some bad games. And the last 2 weeks with Pickens, they've been good, but they haven't been great with CD back. And so I do think that Pickens, his ceiling is still high, but I don't think we'll get as many. I don't think we'll get as many massive games as we were without CD. So I worry about that, and I think that his matchup today, Monangai, is so great. I'm going to go with Monangai, and that's against my rankings. My rankings would tell you otherwise. I'm going to go with Monangai over Pickens. Appreciate the super chat. Adrian, appreciate the super chat. What's going on? Where are you? Do you think Pinheiro will kick this time? Did I see that he was dealing with injury? Let's check this really quick. No, Eddie Pinheiro's fine. Yeah, I think it's a better game. I've still got Eddie Pinheiro as a top 3 kicker in the week. I think he's gonna be fine. Matchup is just better. They're in a much better matchup. The Giants defense I don't think is as good as the Texans. So I think Pinheiro is still a top 3 to top 5 guy. Appreciate the super chat. G Medina, appreciate the super chat. Half PPR for wide receiver 2. Start 1 Higgins, Dobbs, Jennings. T. Higgins is the pick for sure. If it's Jaden Higgins, I'll go with Romeo Dobbs. I just don't like playing Juwan Jennings. If you play Juwan Jennings, it's a floor game. Like, that's a floor game situation if you play Juwan Jennings. So either way, if it's T. Higgins, I'll go with T for sure because I think his ceiling is the highest out of the bunch. And if it's Jaden Higgins, I'll go with Dobbs. because either way, you're getting a floor game out of Jennings. Either way. So I'll go with T. Higgins. Appreciate the super chat. Amaryllis Continue. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. RB2 in the flex. Debo, Harvey, Ty Tracy, and Kenneth Walker. I will personally go ahead and play Debo and Tracy. I think Harvey, a lot of people probably get disappointed today. It's not a great matchup. I don't put it past him that he could get in the end zone again. He is getting used at the goal line, but his usage overall hasn't been great. And if the Houston defense is as good as I think they are, and they are very good, probably limits the goal line to like inside the 5 possessions that the Broncos have, which just lowers the chances that RJ gets in the end zone. So I think that RJ is going to be a little bit of a lower player. I'd play Kenneth over Harvey, but I'd play Tracy over Kenneth Walker. So I'd go Tracy and I'd go Debo. Appreciate the super chat. Andre the DJ, appreciate the super chat. Which 2 to start? Shakir, Sutton, Bam Knight. I would personally go with Bam Knight, and I'd go with Sutton. Again, I think that the problem I have with Sutton is obviously the matchup, but there is a line. There is a line, and I think that I'm not playing Bam Knight over Sutton, and I'm not going to play Shakir over Sutton, even though Shakir is in a better matchup today. I'll go with Sutton and Bam Knight. Appreciate the super chat. Miggs, appreciate the super chat. Drop DJ Moore for Brashard Smith. Have Sutton, Eggy, JJ, and Rice. It just depends on how deep the league is. Like, DJ Moore is not a guy like I'm pining for you to drop or anybody to, really. I think in most leagues, like, DJ Moore seems crazy to be on the waiver wire, but he hasn't been great. So, like, if you're in a shallower league, and you probably are because your wide receiver room is stacked, there's got to be a better player, though. If you're in like a 10 or 12 man league, there's got to be a player for you to drop. Like you had a flex fill in somewhere one week with bye weeks or something like that. I mean, I guess if that's your worst option, I'm okay with doing that because I do think Brashard Smith, we're about to see a massive uptick in what he's going to do. So I'm fine with that. Appreciate the super chat. Micah Renor, appreciate the super chat. Full PPR flex. Ladd, DK, Jalen Warren, or Vidal. I would personally go with very good options. I'm going to go with Kamani Vidal. I like Kamani Vidal a lot. They're all good options. Like, I could see a world where I play all those guys. I think I actually am playing every one of those guys in a different league. I think Vidal is the best, though. Like, give me a reason to not play him, right? Like, he has looked good running the ball, looked great as a pass catcher. Harbaugh backs up both of those claims. It's a great matchup versus Tennessee. Find me a fault. And nobody can, so I'm going to play Kamani Vidal. Appreciate the super chat. Dante DeMora, good to see you. Appreciate the super chat. Pick 3, Tracy, Bam Knight, Chase Brown, Hunt, Brashard Smith, and Henderson. I'll go with Henderson as one of them to give you a big upside play. I'll go with Brashard Smith as one of them as well to give you an upside play. And I will personally go with Tracy to give you more of a good floor. They're all very closely ranked. Hunt is the easy out for me because I don't have him highly ranked. As highly ranked, rather. But, yeah, Tracy, Brashard Smith, and Henderson are my picks. Appreciate the super chat. Mr. Trey Cerro Cinco, appreciate the super chat. Full PPR, pick 2. Horton, Michael Wilson, Slayton, and Ayomaner. Easily Slayton, for sure. The guy got a massive touchdown taken away from him last week. It was BS. He's going to be involved. Slayton is one of them, and I will personally go with Horton over Michael Wilson and Ayomaner. Cooper Kupp, is he playing today? We probably have a little bit of an update. I know he was injured and added to the injury report. They do not expect Kupp to play. Torrey Horton's a solid play, guys. I'll go Torrey Horton and Slayton. Appreciate the super chat. Aiden Palomares. Appreciate the super chat. Pick 2, PPR, Woody Marks, David Montgomery, Kareem Hunt. I will personally go with Woody, and I'll go with Kareem Hunt over Monty because I do think that in that scenario, it makes sense to go with a guy who is the RB2 and has the better upside as far as getting in the end zone because he's been more of a consistent goal line back. I'll go with Hunt and I'll go with Woody Marks. Appreciate the super chat. Jeremy Cody, appreciate the super chat. Pick 2, Kamara, Horton, Trey Tucker, Parker Washington, Brashard Smith. I'll go Brashard Smith, and I will go with I'll go with Torrey Horton. Yeah. I will personally go with Torrey Horton as the other option. Without Cooper Kupp, I think he'll be pretty involved tonight. Appreciate the super chat. What is going on? Okay. S Zen, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. In my 2 flex keeper PPR league, who do I start as my last flex? Ladd, Etienne, or Monangai? I'm already starting Gibbs, JT, Lamb, Rice, and Vidal. You're starting Gibbs, JT, Lamb, Rice, and Vidal. All good plays. I'll go with Monangai. Since you're already playing Vidal, I'll keep it to just one Charger, even though I think Ladd will be a good play. But I'll keep it with just one Charger, and I'll go with the Bear running back because I think the matchup is fantastic today. I'm a big Monangai fan today. Like I really do think he's a good play. ETN also a good play. I'll just personally go with Monangai. Appreciate the super chat. Michael Merowitz, appreciate the super chat. Daniels or Dart? J-Mo, Boutte, Jennings, or Franklin. Start 2. Tet, Sutton, Wandale, Shakir, and Rico. Daniels or Dart? I'll go with Daniels. It's been a popular question today. They're a couple spots ranked differently, but I'll go with Jaden Daniels. J-Mo, Boutte, Jennings, or Franklin. I will personally go with... I'll go with J-Mo. I know people won't like it, but I'm going to go with J-Mo in this game. They're all like... Again, Jennings is a floor play. I don't like playing floor plays. Franklin is boomer bust. Boutte's boomer bust. And J-Mo's boomer bust. So I'll go with the guy on the best offense. And then start 2, Tet, Sutton, Wandale, Shakir, and Rico. I will personally go with Tet. And I will also go with... I'll go with... Rico and Sutton are so close. I will go with Rico. I think he'll have the better workload today and probably has less of a chance of being stifled than Sutton, which I know sounds crazy, but I'll go Rico and Ted. Appreciate the super chat. Michael Ramos, appreciate the super chat. I have Jones and Daniels. Who do I start? Thank you so much. I will go with... I think Daniel Jones is higher ranked. Let's check. Daniel Jones. Yeah, Daniel Jones is one spot ranked higher than Jaden. And I'll probably stick with my ranking on that one. I'll go with Daniel Jones. He's been really consistent, and I think his ceiling is probably just as high as Jaden's. So I'll go with Daniel Jones. They're both good options, though. Appreciate the super chat. Andrew H. Appreciate the super chat. Pick 1, Aaron Jones, Kamara, Boutte, Quentin Johnston. I will personally go ahead and play Quentin Johnston. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to get deterred by the goose egg that we just saw. I think that he will definitely be a factor today, and I don't see him blanking 2 weeks in a row. I'll go with QJ. They're all boomer bust. Appreciate the super chat. All right, everybody who has questions, load them up right now. I'm going to try to go through as many as possible, as many of these free questions as possible in the next 3 minutes. So load them up. Going to start out with start Caleb Williams, Stafford, or Jordan Love. I will personally go ahead and play Jordan Love. Tootin Pierce or Parker Washington. I will go with Parker Washington. Caleb Williams or Mac Jones. I'll go with Caleb. Start Jaylen Warren or Sutton. I will personally go ahead and play Jaylen Warren. Brian Thomas Jr. or Sutton. I'll go with Brian Thomas Jr. Vidal or Warren. I'll go with Vidal. Monangai or Chase Brown. I'll go Monangai. Caleb or Mac Jones. Caleb for me. Worthy or Boutte. I'll go with Boutte. Dart or Brissett. I'll go with Dart. K9 or Pitts. I'll go with K9 with the return of London. Roll with Ertz at flex or drop Tootin and scoop Slayton. I drop Tootin and scoop up Slayton, and I'll go with Ertz as my flex. That's exactly what I would do. Rico or Henry? Hendy. I'm going Rico. I know it's unpopular. That's what I'm doing, though. Andre Smith, Christian Watson, Troy Franklin, or Keon Coleman. I will personally go ahead and play Keon Coleman in this matchup. Bam Knight or Spears. I'll go with Bam Knight. Drake London or Odunze. I will go with Odunze today. Sutton or Brian Thomas Jr. BTJ for me. Worthy or Boutte. I'll go with Boutte. Ferguson or Worthy. I'll go with Ferguson. Bam or Spears. I'll go with Bam. Jaylen Warren versus Indy. Pickens versus Arizona. BTJ versus Las Vegas. I will personally go with Pickens. Tet, Genty, Monangai. I'll go with Tet. I'll go with Genty and Monangai. Drop Worthy for DK. I will not do that. There's just no upside in Tennessee's offense for me to do that. Tet or Montgomery. I'll go with Tet. Stroud or Geno. I will go with Geno this week, actually. Keenan, Woody, Marks, Dave Montgomery, pick 2. Kareem Hunt, Woody, or Montgomery. I'll go with Hunt, and I'll go with Woody Marks. Daniels or Love. I'll go with Jaden Daniels. DJ Moore or Juwan Jennings. I will go with DJ Moore. Nix or Brissett. I'll go with Bo Nix. Jaylen Warren, Pickens, Brian Thomas Jr. I will go with Pickens. And it is noon. So, thank you guys for being in here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel on your way out. Please go support me if you feel so inclined. Become a kind supporter at fsroundup.com. Sign up for the premium subscription, $6 a month. League-winning tools. You'll get the automatic waiver tool, my top 250 rankings on a weekly basis. You will get comparison features, league sync-up features for $6 a month. If you feel so inclined to go check that out and support me, that would be fantastic. But either way, I love you guys, and I'll see you in here tomorrow. Peace out, everyone.